All right, Henry, we're live and recording. Go ahead.
Okay.
Sir.
We are got the start of the meeting of, I got to turn my video on now,
Yeah.
of January 18th, 2022 of the Transportation Advisory Committee for City of Oregon City. Kim being otherwise detained, I'm going to have Vance call the roll.
That sounds good. Hang on just a quick second. Okay, Mr. McEnroth,
There.
Mr. Atkinson,
Present.
Mr. Simmons,
Here.
Mr. LaSalle,
Here.
and Bruce, my deepest apologies. I don't have it in front of me. I forgot your last name. I'm sorry.
It's Freeze.
Freeze, Mr. Freeze.
Here.
Very good. Thank you.
And we have Dana Webb sitting in. Next order of business is, according to the agenda.
Hey, Henry, hang on just a quick second.
Okay.
Cheddar is logging on right now.
Okay.
Hello, Mr. Jessic, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Great, Mr. Jessic is present. Thanks, Henry. Please proceed.
Now then, having get started here a little bit. Approval of the minutes is the next item on the agenda. Is there anybody who wants to make any changes to the minutes? If not, are there any objections to have them being approved?
Motion to approve the minutes.
I believe we've approved the minutes. So
Oh,
Great, and Tim Morgan has joined us, and John Lewis is joining us.
okay. Next item is, if I can get to it. Hell.
Looks like
Yeah, I'm trying to get my stuff back up here. Oh, there you are. I don't know how you did that. Okay.
Please leave a message after the tone.
Now then, adoption of the agenda, and I have an item I want to bring up for discussion, which is a letter of support to the League of Oregon Cities for Senator Kinnaman's proposed legislation for having a vote on tolling of roadways or interstate roadways. And I understand that Vance has something that he would like.
yes, that's correct, Henry. Another thing I'd like to add to the agenda after the Public Works report. One of the board members, Savannah Ovaldia, has been absent for I don't know how many meetings, many meetings. Kim has reached out to her 3 times. Henry, I believe you've reached out to her once and have received 0 responses to those attempts to contact her and 0 responses on the quorum checks. So again, probably at the end of the Public Works report, I think the board members should discuss Savannah's status on this committee.
Anything else? Any other business? Well, moving on then, we have public comments. And I believe Bob LaSalle has a comment that he would like to make.
Yes, thank you, Henry. I've recently been privileged to be appointed to the City Planning Commission. And so unfortunately, I've decided to resign from the Transportation Committee. between the Planning Commission and my responsibilities as chair of the CIC, I just had to give up something, and unfortunately TAC was one of them, but I just wanted to express my appreciation to all the members of a very, very good and effective committee. I've really enjoyed my time on it and reluctantly had to resign. I was looking at the roster though, and I realized that at first I was going to say I'm the oldest member, but in deference to Henry, I don't think I'm truly the oldest. I'm the longest term on the committee. I've been on it longer than anybody else.
I do believe you're right.
I think so. So anyway, I want to just take this opportunity to thank everybody for a really great time. It's a really wonderful committee, and welcome to the two new members. I had, when the mayor called me, had a funny thing happened. Because during my interview, I told the committee, the selection committee, that I would probably have to be resigning from the TAC. And so when she called me and told me that I'd been selected, she said, now, are you going to follow up with resigning from the TAC? Because I have a bit of a problem. And I said, well, what's that? And she said, well, there is one opening on the TAC for a new member, and I have 2 applicants. And so she said, I have to choose between them. And I said, well, I will truly be resigning from the TAC now that I know I've been going to be appointed to the Planning Commission. And she said, well, that makes it easy for me because we've got 2 applicants and now we'll have 2 openings, and it makes my job easier. So I had to remind her, of course, that she now owes me one. But anyway, welcome to Miles and Bruce. You'll have a good time with this outfit, especially if you ever get back to live meetings and you have those pizzas before the meetings. So anyway, thanks everybody for your support, and I'll be keeping track of you.
Well, thank you, Bob, for your service. And I want to especially thank you for being the chair and a vice chair for a good share of your service.
Yeah, that was an interesting time, to say the least. You don't know what you're asking for until you actually become a chair, do you?
Yeah. So anyway, thank you very much.
You betcha, and I'll be signing off. Have a good meeting.
Okay.
Take
Thank
care,
you,
Bob.
Appreciate it.
You bet.
And Henry, before we proceed, I did want to mention that Miles Tatch did respond to Kim and I today. He's very ill and was not able to make the meeting tonight.
And we also got an email distributed from a former speaker about Pioneer Place. And it basically, it was providing a support for inappropriate traffic going along the road between Leland and Myers.
Is that Frontier Parkway, Henry?
Frontier Parkway, I'm sorry, yes.
Yeah, no problem. Yes, I did see that email.
And
And
so,
I was speaking with Kim earlier. I think that's something that we would like to noodle on here as staff. And let's have that for a topic for the February meeting.
and we will probably expect to have a report sometime when something determined.
Correct. Yeah. I've not been able to circle with John and Dana on that at this point, other than, yes, we have looked at it a bunch. We continue to, and we will have some some type of report to be able to give the TAC board on February meeting.
And somebody will respond to that email then?
Yes, I will respond.
Okay,
Perfect.
so now we'll officially welcome our new members and say, go ahead and join into the conversation. This is probably, as Ben and Tim and Ray and Jeddick will probably say, this is slightly informal, but we need your opinions. We need your discussion points. So don't be afraid to somehow get the chair's attention. And it's, be willing to come up with something. And
Henry, maybe if Bruce wants to take just a minute or two, introduce himself to the group. And I'm not sure if he has met everybody. So Bruce, maybe tell us who you are, and then I'll call on folks for introductions.
Perfect. Thanks for that. Yeah, I don't believe I've had anybody a chance to meet other than you, Vance, briefly at the open house, which was a quick quick handshake on the way up. But yeah, my name is Bruce Fries. I'm excited to be part of the team. I've been an Oregon City resident for about 23 years now. So I've watched it grow a lot. I moved here. I lived in San Francisco area, San Diego. I came from a big city and came to Oregon City because it was small, and now it's starting to get bigger, and seen a lot of changes and growth, and filed a few complaints myself and didn't necessarily get the results I liked. So I figured, you can complain or you can get involved. So here I am getting involved and getting a better understanding. And I just like the direction that the city's going, where they get a lot of public feedback and stuff like that for the changes that we're making in the future. So I'm excited to add my value and input to this team.
Very good. Thank you, Bruce. Henry?
oh, well, I've been knocking around this area for way too many years, as Bob pointed out. And I've been living in Oregon City coming on 30 years now. Used to live and work out of Milwaukee before a good share of you were even born, I think. And I used to be the city engineer for Oregon City, a couple of them back from Dana. And so because the city is contributing to my way of life here financially, I thought I ought to owe them the benefit of my time in some way, so they get a little something for their payment.
Excellent. Thank you, Henry. Ben?
So I'm Ben Simmons. I've been on the TAC now for, I think, a little over 2 years, if I recall. I'm a small business owner in Oregon City and lived here the vast majority of my 40-some years. Small bit of time I was in Portland and Westland, but a good 30 of it was probably always been in Oregon City. And so, yeah, same kind of point that you had, Bruce, that we can sit back and we can complain, or we can be part of the solution. And that's always been my thought process in joining the TAC, and hopefully we can make a good difference.
Very good. Thank you, Ben. Chedemir?
Yeah, I've been with TAC now for a while. I've been living in Oregon City for, since 98 or something. And I'm a civil engineer by profession. So I'm kind of involved, and I work right now for a transportation firm. So I'm always in this kind of work. So it's giving back to city. So anyways, that's me.
Great. Thank you, Chedemir. Mr. Atkinson?
Ray Atkinson, pronouns he, him. I've been on the committee for 3 years now, just finished my first term. So this is my second term. And I work for Clackamas Community College doing transportation planning. I got interested in this committee because I've never owned a car, and I walk, bike, ride transit, and want to make places that are safe and convenient to do those modes, walking, biking, riding transit. And I was born and raised in North Carolina, so I moved out here for grad school at PSU back in 2014.
Very good. Thank you, Ray. Mr. Morgan.
Yes, hi, I'm Tim Morgan. I've been a resident of Oregon City. It'll be 3 years next month. We built our home here. Lived in Washington County for 24 years, I guess. I guess somehow the math adds up. Yeah, and then it was Tigard. Anyway, moved from Beaverton to here. I'm in the insurance and financial services industry, and also still actively involved in aviation. My was kind of the same thing. Either get up and do something about it, or you get finding out the wrong answers to get to your results. So I wanted to get involved, and I like this community, and I want to keep it pristine, and I thoroughly enjoy it. It's been a year. They say they get together for dinner. I don't know if it's fake news or not because I've never seen one, but I'm waiting for that day when I don't have to eat my dinner on my keyboard here. So, welcome to the group.
Very good. That does it for the TAC board members. Dana Webb.
Good evening. I'm Dana Webb, city engineer. I've been with Oregon City for I think about 6.5 years, and I present various topics at TAC. Thanks.
Thank you, Dana. Mr. Lewis.
Good evening, everybody. Bruce, it's welcome to the meeting. It is a good group. I think we try to run a lot of updates by the folks with the idea that maybe they'll share that with their communities as well, and then help us make some decisions, not all, but some decisions as they relate to TAC. And sometimes we do some things like make letters of support or authorize approvals of various documents. So it's a good group. It's well staffed. For instance, tonight, Vance and Dana are going to take the reins because I've been elsewhere and just got back into town. So I'm just now logging in. I've been with the city for about 18 years, and many of that has been staff level with the TAC. And so I've come to appreciate all the volunteer hours that go into that. And Bruce, I recognize you sort of. I was like, I know this guy. Where do I know him? When he was at the open house. And I'm pleased to hear we had TAC representation at the open house, because I saw you and I couldn't place you, but now I understand where that was at. So thank you for coming to that open house.
Thank you, John. And Bruce, I'm Vance Walker, the Assistant Public Works Director. I've been employed with the City of Oregon City for a little over 3 years now. Prior to that, I was a street supervisor for the City of Tigard and the City of Lake Oswego. So transportation is near and dear to my heart. And I would like to point out that John's background is not a good example of things that the TAC board helps and the city produces. So just so you know, okay. All right, that wraps up introductions. Henry, please proceed.
So now we move on to the new business items. And before the Public Works presentation, which I assume Vance is going to do, I would like to have open discussion on the 2 items that Vance and I have inserted into the agenda. And I'll let Vance go first on the business of our absent board member, transportation committee member.
Very good, Henry. As I mentioned earlier, Savannah Ovaldia seemingly has decided to not participate in the TAC meetings. Again, we've reached out to her several times, as has Henry. Our bylaws are very clear on how many meetings a board member can miss, and she is quite a bit over that. So The board members, I think you're free to discuss it, talk about it. John, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it would be a vote of the board members to get her off the Traffic Advisory Committee, Transportation Advisory Committee, excuse me.
It would be a vote. We'd have to agree that she has been non-participating and that we need to remove her. So if there is such a motion or any discussion, how about if
I was just gonna say, without her participation and without her responding, I think it doesn't leave a whole lot of room for discussion. So I would just go ahead and move and proceed with the removal. I would put that motion forward.
Is there a second?
I'll second it as a new person. We definitely want people here that are involved and engaged. And if we need some new fresh blood in here, then that sounds like that's what we need to do.
Okay.
Any other discussion? Then we should have a vote. All in favor of removing her from the position on TAC, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All of them that want to abstain? It looks like we agreed. So Vance, if Kim could put together a letter, which probably the chair of the board, chair of the Transportation Committee should sign, or at least co-sign, then we'll call it a deal, call it done.
Sounds good, Henry. I'll have Kim produce that for you, and I'm sure you'll have it shortly.
Okay, thank you. Now, I put one out saying that the Transportation Advisory Committee should put a letter of support together and send it to the League of Oregon Cities for support of the proposed legislation that Senator Brenneman has said he wants to put together to have the citizens of the state that are within 13 miles of either side of a proposed toll road or proposed change to a toll road would vote on the situation. And this has been detailed in the Oregon City News of last Wednesday. And because the legislation session will start in February, and our next meeting probably won't occur until it's probably too late to submit letters of support or letters of refusal or anything, it seemed appropriate to bring it up at this point and see if we want to do that. And if so, get it drafted. And again, if there's any other letters or anything that would be appropriate, that is to say, if the commissions of Westland and Oregon City are working on something, then that should be either incorporated into such a letter, I should think. So that's the proposal. And it's open for discussion. I want to hear discussion also from staff if that's appropriate.
I guess I would just say that from what I've heard from people in the public and the community, that I would say there's a very heavy opposition to what we've been hearing so far. I think a general premise of putting it to a vote sounds like a great idea. I haven't read the particulars about it, so I'd be a little hesitant to just sign off something carte blanche without knowing what's in it. But as far as a general premise is concerned, I would definitely say I myself would support, a vote of the people for this particular project.
I tend to kind of see things a little bit in a strange direction sometimes. And what I'm thinking I see here is a feeler to extend the concept of tolling to other areas of the state, that in order to supply maintenance funds and improvement funds to other areas, based on that the Newburgh bypass, when it was proposed, was also proposed as a toll road. And if they raise any significant amount of money from the Portland tolls, why would they not consider tolling around Salem, Eugene, and other areas where they need the funds but don't have them? So that's sort of the scenario I could see unfolding.
So without seeing this document that he's proposing, are they talking about the ballot initiative process? Or is this a targeted legislation that would only be put up to a vote of a certain group or targeted area?
Okay, here is the paragraph that kind of describes it, which is Senator Bill Kennemer announced January 7th, one of his two priority bills for this February short legislative session is a major, which, if passed, would create an amendment to the Oregon Constitution to allow residents living within 15 miles of a proposed tollway to vote on whether to approve or reject the proposal. The measure is a direct response to increasing voter frustration with plans to toll sections of Interstate 5 and 205, as well as the potential for tolling the entire freeway system in the Tri-County metro region. And then it goes on for half a page of discussion.
So John, do you know if the city commission is aware of this and have discussed this and has a position on it? Because I know we serve at their pleasure. So I think their input and would definitely need to coincide with, I know we all have our individual opinions.
As far as I know, they haven't had a policy discussion on this. There has been, I think, some discussion at the Clackamas County C4, but I don't know to what level. This, to me, I just pulled it up because I think this was brought up at a Oregon City Business Alliance meeting too, where he attended and kind of shared his idea. The news article that I found was written January 7th by Raymond Rendelman about the fact that Bill Kennemer hopes a measure will tap into increasing voter frustration. So some of it could be politics at this point in time. I agree. It's needs to be on the radar, but I'm not sure what we're voting on. Henry, just to be clear about that, I would wait until either he's raised something in the legislature that can be read and shared. Other than that, it's just news, and I'm not sure how. Just reading the article, it sounds like a lot of sense that the community doesn't like the idea of tolling, and that's not necessarily new news. We've been kind of hearing that amongst the community. So I would wait on this one, if you don't mind, Henry, just because I don't think we know what we're supporting here, because it's not clear, at least not from the article that I'm looking at.
And to be honest, I'm not sure I know the current status of his proposal either. So I'm willing to say, let's think about it and watch it, and if it comes up as a solid measure, because if it's a constitutional change, it'll have to have way more discussion than what it's going to get in 15 days. So
we could email him. I have his email address somewhere. I'll have to find it. And I can email him and ask him if he can give us maybe a more detailed description of how his bill is going to be structured. And then we can look at that. Because they're not going to be meeting very long in February. I think it's only a couple of weeks, I believe.
Yeah, it's only a 15-day session. Yeah. And so if you could do that, I would thank you.
Okay, yeah, I'll when we get done the meeting, I have his email in my computer somewhere. And I'll send him an email, let him know we're interested in what he's doing. Maybe it'd be better if I called him. I don't know. I'll do either one of the two.
Ray, did you raise your hand?
Yeah, I was just going to make a quick comment on this topic. I'm probably maybe the only one in the room who doesn't support this legislation, because I feel that people have already voted for the legislators who voted for the tolling. And so in my mind, it's already been, voted on by Oregon Transportation Commission, by the Oregon legislature. And so in my mind, people have voted already. And so that's my stance on it. Thank you.
Well, he wasn't in the legislature to vote for it at the time. He filled a position that was open in our district. He was a prior legislator, but he was not at the time when they made the vote about starting the tolling.
Okay. So now it's the Public Works report.
Very good. And Henry, I hate to disappoint you. It's not going to be me giving the report. It's going to be Dana Webb.
Oh, well, Dana, would you please give us the Public Works report?
Sure. Vance, it looks like it's not letting me screen share.
Okay.
And while Vance works on that, I will share in your packet this evening is the updated TAC roster, the 2022 meeting schedule. So the meetings are typically held on the third Tuesday of each month at 6 p.m. We often take July, August, and December off if there's no critical topics. And I believe the intention for the next year would be to continue the virtual meetings. And then the current bylaws are included.
And Dana, I'm going to make you co-host, and I think that will allow you to screen share. So I just made you co-host. See if that works.
All right, let's.
There you go.
All right. Sorry, I'm trying to get it so I can still see you guys. What do I got going on? Too many screens. Well, we'll go from here, see if I can try and see you guys. So I think at the last meeting, there was a request for an update on the OR 213 speed limit. I know at one point there was a direct citizen outreach to ODOT for a review of the speed limit. So the visual here shows the orange area of 213. So this is 213, Holcomb Overpass, Redland, up to Clackamas River Drive, and then up to 205. This orange section is currently posted 55 miles an hour. And then this kind of green section is posted 45 miles an hour. And so this area circled in the purple is the area that's being reviewed. So when this came up, ODOT reached out to the city and asked kind of our thoughts and opinions, since although 213 is an ODOT roadway, it's located in the city. And so they wanted city concurrence before moving forward with a speed study. So I did a quick look. There is a pretty high percentage of crashes in this area. And so the official request for speed limit review was put in the queue with ODOT in August of 2021. And so as a kind of a quick reminder for those of you who've been on TAC before, and also to share with our new members, these reviews are done by the state. So the Oregon Department of Transportation does all speed limit reviews for city roads, county roads, state roadways. And currently they have a fairly large backlog of requests, as well as a shortage of staff. So it's taking about 9 to 12 months to get a review completed and a new speed limit established. So with a submittal in August, we'd be looking at probably hearing back from ODOT in summer to late summer timeframe. So that's the update on that. Is there any questions?
Yes, I don't know if it was my request or not, because I seem like I'm falling on deaf ears with those folks over there. But the other thing, in addition to that, is the on-ramp that goes northbound on 205. They need to construct a barrier there. In a period of 1 month, there was 3 crashes where cars missed the turn and hit the tree or right near the tree there. And what my fear is that somebody's going to continue to keep flying down and it's going to T-bone a car on the 205 going northbound and not knowing the car is going to become flying out at a 45-degree angle. It is frequent. I mean, I travel it every day going to and from work. And there's really no reason why this speed is 55 miles an hour from Redlands Road up to the other traffic light when you have all this congestion going on in there. So I'm glad to see that it's finally moving its way forward.
All right.
Do we have to amend it on that if we want it, when we do the study, the things that they need to look at, or?
So their work would look just at speed limit. If there was a request to add any kind of a barrier, that would be probably to their maintenance group to look at. So completely different group. The speed limit review group is based out of Salem and is a statewide group where I suspect a request for some kind of a barrier within our area would be to a district manager.
Okay. I'm sure if you pull up the police reports, you'll find numerous vehicles that have been abandoned with yellow tape around them that have smashed, between the traffic continuing longer trying to get on the on-ramp. I don't know how people manage this on-ramp. There's 2 lanes on that on-ramp, and yet it's frequent. There's cars in the middle in the grass area there. So, okay. Well, we'll figure that out. Thank you for that update. That's great.
The next topic is Trillium Park Drive. John, do you want to cover this one or do you want me to?
Well, let's see. It's kind of my project. I've forgotten the slide and the details of this slide, but this looks like a bit of a history around Trillium Park Drive. Trillium Park Drive is a closed roadway right now. It actually sits right behind the hospital in a residential neighborhood, and it's closed due to landslide. So we've had a kind of a slow moving landslide for really, I mean, I think it was 2006 when I first remember being involved in the landslide there, and it's continued to slide. And some years more than others, usually those wet years. This is an area that's that seems to move when the soil gets super saturated. And it's also an area that was it's got I would say a relatively shallow fill that was built when they built the subdivision to build the roadway through there. And so, I think that fill had something to do with the slide. It's also in an area that, in today's standards probably wouldn't have been allowed to develop. But we've closed the road using barricades. We had proposed trying to build a kind of a one-way road system through that. I think we presented to you on that in the past. And we found out really that some of the early design assumptions with regard to cost and constructability were off a bit. And so, working back through that with the geotech and the consultant, we've moved to a different design that doesn't necessarily put a through roadway through there, but puts in, it removes basically the concrete and asphalt, puts back a more natural landscape, and also a soft path that would connect the two ends for neighborhood connectivity. And we've met with the neighborhood a variety of times on this. We're moving forward with the design of the work. We completed the design and the construction of the sewer work, so that's no longer in the slide zone, and the water and gas lines have been abandoned. So this is really just letting you know that we're still moving forward with that. We hope to see the, oh, there we go. Okay, thanks for that, Dana. So yeah, this is basically a design, the start of a design drawing, which kind of shows a typical hammerhead turnaround that we're proposing to kind of allow for garbage trucks, neighborhood delivery trucks, whatever, fire trucks to be able to do that kind of hammerhead turnaround if they get to the end of that. And then the end of that would be denoted with some end of road barriers, and then we'd see soft path with, I think we've proposed some pathway level lighting and probably a bench along there, and again, just kind of a soft path that and bollards so that people could walk it, but it could also be, sized such that if emergency vehicles needed access through there, that could happen as well. Both of these streets from either end turn into essentially kind of dead ends. So before they had kind of through connection that would give them a couple of points of access if they needed to go towards, I guess it's Canyon Court or Davis, it's not AB Davis, I think it's Davis Road, which would be a little bit north of the hospital, or go the other way. That would be, kind of to the south of the hospital. And so we think it's still a good project. It's still a very expensive project. And we've been trying to balance the expense of this project with all the other transportation needs. This obviously serves a handful of people versus some of our other projects that serve thousands of people. So I think while we want to get it fixed and get it fixed right, we're just trying to, when we looked at the cost to do the full, what we were going to do was kind of a one-way street connection so that folks could see from one end to the other and, allow for, two-way traffic there one at a time. The traffic counts are super low up there, but it's just too costly by the time we looked at all the, geotechnical data associated with something like that, where this feels a little bit more like a kind of a no-build solution, even though there's still plans. I think, is there another slide on this one, Dana? Yeah, so here's kind of a concept of concept drawing that shows what we've got going on up there. And I think the neighborhood's been super patient with us, but they're about done, I think, with that, and they're ready to see something get built. So we are working with a firm called RH2 to finish up the design work on this and get it out to bid in the season in which we can build in a geologic hazard, which is more like a summer season. So other than that, I'm happy to answer questions.
John, is there houses that are in danger of sliding, or is this, because looking at the topographical, it looks like there's 3 houses?
Yeah, if we could go back to that slide, Dana, there's one house that is right there that Dana has highlighted. That house has been demolished, at least the wooden structure, the foundation's still sitting there. So that's in the slide zone and has been removed. That's the only house that's been removed. The other lots that are kind of on the other side of the canyon are undeveloped. And then there's the closest house right there is got, we've been keeping an eye on it. It's got a pretty special foundation, but even that, we've heard from the property owner that there's some issues there, but we think that our work would actually, reduce the likelihood of more sliding in the area. But we're not going to stop it. We're just kind of eliminating some of the load that sits on there. Thank you, Dana.
I have a question about the trail access. Does the plan include wayfinding plan, or is that later on you're going to get into like signage and making sure like there's not a sign saying do not or road ends ahead, but then it doesn't say bikes and pedestrians can continue through. You know what I mean by that? Like making sure bikes and pedestrians know that they have access through this dead end street.
Well, I think, yeah, we've got some signage plans for this, which we haven't shown, but I mean, this would be a lot more like a neighborhood connection, Ray. So it's not like it's a commuter route other than what the local commuters would need. So I don't know that we need a lot of signage there, but definitely, you know, to the degree we need signage there, our intention is to put that signage.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Dana.
All right, for our next topic, I was going to give a short update on the Oregon City Shuttle. So Oregon City has a first mile, last mile shuttle that launched in July of 2021. The shuttle is a free deviated fixed route service, which means that it has a set route, but it will deviate up to 3/4 of a mile to pick up or drop off if requested. Currently, the shuttle operates on weekdays only and is a loop route, kind of shown here in blue with the directional arrows. So as a loop route, it takes about 90 minutes to do the full loop. And with only one shuttle vehicle, it isn't the most convenient. And so, you know, as we've kicked this off, we've been following the ridership numbers. Our ridership was kind of on an upward trajectory for the first couple months. And then in October, we saw a huge drop to about 1/3 of what we had seen in September. And we're still not 100% sure what caused that. It's slowly coming back up. And so the original map is the blue map with the blue circles with the letters that designate those primary stops. And then the yellow stars are kind of additional stops along the way. And what I've done is add these red circles around the stops that see the highest ridership. And so for the most part, it is those primary stops, which we generally designed the route around, knowing we wanted to be able to get people to and from the hospital, grocery stores, over in the residential neighborhoods, up into the Park Place area, serving the housing, the county housing authority properties, and then connecting into the Oregon City Shopping Center and the Transit Center, as well as kind of City Hall area. And so these ones with the red circles see the highest ridership. And what we were hoping as we kind of looked through our ridership information is that we'd see an area of town that wasn't really highly utilizing the shuttle, and we might be able to readjust the routing. But as you can see, there's not a huge area. We do see kind of lower ridership up in here, but that furthest point away is where we see the high ridership up in this neighborhood. And so we're continuing to, you know, follow and track the ridership numbers, trying to understand those better. We've done quite a bit of outreach in the last few months. We have a monthly e-news subscription. So you can sign up to get a monthly e-news letter from the city in your email inbox. And we include an update each month and a reminder that the shuttle is out there with a link to the route for everyone. Those also get posted on social media. We worked back in October and November with some of the larger employers and groups and agencies in Oregon City, providing both digital and print copies of the brochures and the route posters to share with their customers, their employees. You know, you can use this to, you know, bypass the need to park downtown. The shuttle will take you right down to the transit center or stops at City Hall, and you can take the elevator down. For those working downtown during the day, currently the shuttle does not serve evenings or weekends, but long-term goals would be to provide service in those times as well. We've also worked with CCC to kind of promote the shuttle, and Ray and the city are working on some other components that would include some mailings and some giveaways. I am also working on a small grant application that would fund the purchase of giveaways, such as a clip-on light that you could hook on your backpack for the riders of the shuttle So they have at least a little bit of something in those darker morning and evening hours where the shuttle driver would be able to see them a little better. And we've also had some discussions about some small hand sanitizers that could be handed out as giveaways. So those kind of things are in the works. We're continuing to coordinate closely with both Ray at the college and Clackamas County, who really runs the shuttle on behalf of the city. And so they've also launched the Clackamas Industrial Area Shuttle, which has seen a little bit higher ridership. And they've seen their biggest ridership is picking up folks at the end of the green line and then distributing them to the industrial area. So, and we do see some of our highest volumes at the transit center, also at the Oregon City Shopping Center, and then at the college campus. So that's kind of what we've done to date. We are working on kind of two versions of a survey for those folks that currently ride the shuttle and what they like about it, and maybe what doesn't quite work as well for them that might, encourage them to ride more often. So how can we serve those existing riders better? And then a kind of a second half of that survey that is for those that don't currently use the shuttle and why they don't. Does it not go to the areas they're trying to reach? Is it too long of a route? To really kind of understand how we could build the ridership on that. And then we've also worked closely with Clackamas County, and we've created these videos, and I'm going to see if my technology skills work to play. There's 3 short clips here that we're using on social media to promote the shuttle. And so each one has the same beginning and ending, but the message in the middle is slightly different. So I'll see if this will play.
Let's just hear the sound.
Could you guys hear the audio?
No.
Oh, okay. Well, not the best at technology sometimes. These are all on the city's YouTube page and can be found there. But essentially, it was just kind of walking you through the same things I just kind of explained. So those are out there. We've been trying to share those on social media to kind of draw interest to the shuttle. Are there any questions about the shuttle?
So do we have any, what kind of head counts? Like what's the highest month they've had in ridership? What are they trying to get to?
This has been a tough one because we launched the shuttle during COVID. And so before we hit that drop in back in October, the county was feeling pretty good about the ridership building. I don't have the exact numbers in front of me. I think we were seeing about half of what the industrial shuttle was seeing. But I don't remember the exact numbers. I could look them up and share them with you if you're interested.
And there's no fare charged to the people to ride it?
Correct. It's I'm gonna probably forget exactly. It's a program that fully funds the purchase of the vehicles and
The funding.
operations. Yes.
The
So it's
statewide transportation improvement fund.
yes, it's the same funding source that funds Ray's shuttle for the college.
The one thing I'll add is, so for years, we used to be TriMet served some of these areas a little, maybe not even, not, they didn't have this detail of a route, but I think out along Partlow Road, you know, and those services got cut years ago. And we heard a lot of outcry from the neighborhood about that. So it was nice to be able to get this grant, and this was kind of a long-term grant, but I worry about the ridership and if it's not successful. So, I mean, I think we should acknowledge that it's COVID, you know, it's in the middle of COVID. So a lot of folks, you know, won't even let their kids ride school buses, let alone hop on transportation. So there's a pretty big hurdle there. The other thing is, you know, by design, you know, there was concern that it would be too effective, and it's a small shuttle bus. So, you know, the county, I think, made the conscious decision to start the routes. Let's see how the routes go. Let's see what the timing looks like. You know, and just not over advertise this thing. I think as advertising goes up, we'll see, you know, better improvements, and hopefully as COVID goes down, we'll see even more. I do, you know, agree that, you know, a 90-minute route with one it could be timely, but if there's a couple of opportunities for how, you know, folks commute, I can't remember, does this shuttle have an opportunity to put bicycles on it? Dana, do you recall? Can they actually load a bicycle?
Yep, you can put 2 bikes on the front.
And they're ADA accessible as well. So, and it's the term deviated fixed route means that you can actually call and say, hey, you know, I'd like you to come pick me up at a particular location, and they will deviate to some degree. I think it's like 3/4 of a mile. So it should be a good thing. My hope is TAC members that attend other you know, neighborhood meetings or you know anything like that, you know, just give it a plug or try it yourself and kind of get a sense of it. That's probably another good way to figure out, give us some feedback on that. I don't know, Dana, will the TAC get the questionnaire, or can they get the questionnaire? Can you guys make sure the TAC membership gets that questionnaire?
Yeah,
And that-
once we develop that, you know, we'll have, I think we're looking at doing a QR code on the back of the seats for the existing riders. And then those that aren't using the shuttle today, we would advertise it in the monthly e-news subscription. You know, we could send it out to all the various city committees, CIC, Planning Commission, as a option to provide feedback on why they don't, you know, use the shuttle and what would encourage them to use it.
Dana,
Yes.
a possible type of question for that questionnaire that came to mind during the presentation was, or is the fact that it is scheduled an advantage or a deterrent? My thinking is that a lot of people are on an ad hoc basis, if you will, and say, you know, I want to go to Fred Meyer's now. And so I'm thinking if we can get to that and find out if that's an advantage or a deterrent, it would be helpful.
Yeah, and I think those are the exact kind of questions, you know, when we started planning the shuttle years ago, in fact, pre-COVID, we started planning it, you know, we had those discussions. Should it just be an on-call service? Should it be a scheduled route that deviates? And so, you know, we took feedback from, you know, those that have done transit planning to kind of guide this work. You know, and again, I think sometimes the schedule works well. I think especially in the Clackamas industrial area, where generally those are commute to work trips, I think it does work well. And I think that's what we're seeing. But I think we're questioning a little bit of that is that schedule too rigid for some of the trips that people might use the shuttle for in Oregon City, for getting to their essential services type of trips.
Yeah, if you don't work If you don't work, you don't have a schedule.
I will say, as someone who does ride the shuttle, that your point is, valid, because like, when I want to go to lunch, I'll be like, well, I don't wait till, half an hour until the shuttle arrives. I'm ready to go to lunch now. And instead of biking to lunch, instead of taking the shuttle downtown, and so I just stay on Hilltop, because I'm like, well, I'm not gonna wait for the shuttle to come. And so, yeah, I'm one of those people who's like, I want to take it right now.
And I think that's some of the things that we're hoping to get from the survey. Could we keep a scheduled shuttle? And if we were able to fund a second shuttle that was more of an on-call shuttle, is that a way to kind of balance that? If that's what if that's why riders aren't using the shuttle, then that helps us to better understand how we could, serve them.
What if it during the middle of the slow periods that they have an app that they can make a reservation to pick up on the regular schedule, so they know that they've got 6 people that are going to be picked up at here or whatever, either to run it, and if there's not anybody there, not to run it, so that they're not wasting the gas, the diesel running up and down to dead runs. But during the peak hours, the first thing in the morning and then the evening hours, have those regular schedules and have it more on demand. Excuse me, on demand during the middle of the day. And then everybody's got a smartphone. Most of the people who are traveling, they can develop an app and put a reservation at what stop they want to be at the current schedule, how often it goes there. So at least they'll know, how many potential riders are going to have.
Raise billions of dollars.
And I think those are exactly the kind of things we want to hear from folks who aren't riding it. And then that will give us, more kind of boots on the ground feedback so that we're creating a shuttle that works for the user. So we're still working on survey questions. I don't have an exact timeline when that will come out, but in the next couple of months, we're hoping to get it out.
And I'm curious, for people who don't have smartphones, how to, because you said about QR codes on the shuttle, but is there going to be any like onboard, intercept survey with a person getting on and using paper or clipboard to intercept people who may not have a smartphone to scan the QR code?
Yeah, I think we talked about having some paper copies on the shuttles themselves as well. And again, we could have paper copies at key locations if people wanted to fill them out and leave them filled out for pickup.
Thank you.
All right, let's see. Oh. All right, Park Place Urbanization Plan. I'll give this a try, and if I miss something, John can maybe fill us in. So this is the approved classification plan, which I think we actually did a slight name change on the family-friendly routes on some of these. So my slide image might be slightly outdated. But essentially the Park Place Urbanization Plan went through and looked at all of the roadways in the Park Place neighborhood except Holcomb Boulevard. We've got a pretty good plan that we've worked through with the neighborhood. So it's a little bit dated, but it's a plan that's been worked through with the neighborhood on Holcomb. And so this was really how do we address the neighborhood streets, both those, actually really those that are just already built, or yes, already built, not so much the ones that would be largely built by development. So how do we address Hunter Avenue as we see 1 and 2 lot developments where they're not really generally covering the frontage improvements. And so the plan laid out which roadways would have sidewalks, the planned cross sections, and it's really a development driven plan so that when those applications for land use come in, we have a consistent cross section that we're applying. The Planning Commission heard this plan back in September, and then the City Commission approved the plan in December. That was a very high level, quick overview. Is there questions? I believe we've brought this topic before.
So are they going to widen Holcomb at all? Is that any part of the plan? Or putting a turn lane in the middle?
So the Holcomb Boulevard
Yeah, this is
pedestrian plan does not show, for the most part, a turn lane. I do think the I think the Sears property shows a left turn pocket into their site.
Okay.
Is that correct, John, or is it a left turn pocket? Now I'm not sure if it's left turn into Sears or if it's a left turn for the Park Place lower area.
Is there any provisions in the plan anywhere, and I don't think there is, my memory serves right, for being able to include some sort of, I'm going to call them traffic calming, but more of a speed control type of issue? That long downhill that Holcomb is simply invites you to come down the hill without monitoring your speed very well. And it's endemic to the human race, I think. I don't think it's, anything other than human nature that we're fighting there. But as the population of homes grow higher and higher on that hill and farther away from Redland Road, I think we're going to see more and more of a problem down at the lower end of Holcomb, down around Front and Swan, and by Steve's Market, in terms of just plain weird intersections, that is to say, not 90 degrees to Holcomb, and inability to actually visualize and see the oncoming traffic in order to get safe turning in and out, especially if you want to go around the acute angle. That is to say, you're coming in at the oblique and you want to go up the hill from the north. It's almost impossible to turn your head around enough to be able to see the oncoming traffic.
Yeah, and I
Right.
think in our, go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say, because you're up in my neck of the woods up here, if the city really would like to have a revenue source, they could either do one of two things. They could either put some traffic bumps for speed reduction right at the on the top of Holcomb, up in the blue, where Kitty Hawk is at, where the city line's at, or have a motorcycle police officer meeting the yearly quota. Because I turn into that street and I have to turn fast because people are flying on the north or the very east end of Holcomb until they get to the city limits of Oregon City there. And you can always tell the people who live in the neighborhood and versus the people who are transiting the neighborhood as you're doing 35 now down the hill. So that's kind of a suggestion there of one of the improvements there is I think generally overall, since they've dropped the speed limit, most people are watching it except till they get to the top of the hill there. And then there was another pretty bad accident last week. I don't know what the person did. Took out an entire fence line and hit a street pole, a brand new one. It's only been there for 2 years, and they had to remove it because it was so damaged. Plus, it's hanging right next to the power lines there. So it becomes a drag strip late at night.
I'm not sure that the TSP has any widening projects, and a project like adding a center turn lane. Often that widening of the roadway makes it feel like a bigger, faster road, and sometimes just the addition of that turn lane, especially when it allows the cars to pull out of the travel lane and the travel lane to continue going without having to slow down, you'll see the speed on a roadway increase because the drivers feel like, oh, the left turns are out of my way, now I can speed past them. Where if you have it more of a kind of a rural road with the ditches, they can't always pass around a car waiting to make a left. So a 2-lane road kind of has its inadvertent traffic calming built into it.
True. Swan Island or Swan Road, Swan Avenue, and then Hunter Avenue in front are the 3 major left turn areas. And on both sides on the right side, if you're going eastbound, it's all ditch. It's not, it's, there. And I've seen people try to go right around a car that's turning there and almost go into the ditch. Now, they're going to put sidewalks along that right-hand side if you're going eastbound. Is that what the plan is? Because maybe that will improve the people from speeding even more, trying to go around the people who are turning.
So long-term, ideally, the road would have sidewalks on both sides.
Okay.
Some of you might remember we did a Safe Routes to School grant application a couple of years ago, and we were not selected for funding. We did, after that, move forward with the installation of the pedestrian activated flashing beacon, both at Front Avenue and Swan Avenue. And so those are in and functioning now. I did just today sit through the next round of Safe Routes to School grant notice and webinar. And Holcomb Elementary is our best choice for a project that would be funded based on the school's metrics. And so it's likely that we will kind of update that plan and look at a grant application that would include, sidewalks to connect in those missing areas on there.
Do you get counts on those new traffic? I don't know, what do you call them? The crosswalks, the lighted crosswalks?
They're often called RRFBs.
Okay, so do you get any data from how many times people push the button to cross?
I don't think we have communications to those ones. They're just kind of out there. Some of them you can get button information from them, but I'm not sure that these ones are set up that way.
So Dana, you were talking about going after the grant again for the sidewalks through the Safe Schools program up by the school. Would there also be system development charges with that new development going in that might also accomplish some of those missing sections of sidewalk, or is that outside that scope?
So like in this
Yeah.
area, they would construct their frontage improvements, and
Okay.
then they would pay system development charges. Currently, the way our system development charges work, they go into kind of one big pot of transportation monies. So they wouldn't be set aside specifically for something in that area. If we kept all those little pots of money, we would never have enough money to build anything. And so, that's part of, making sure we're getting things in each neighborhood, but also, looking at bike and pedestrian improvements versus vehicle improvements, kinds of things. So the development on the Sears property would pay SDCs. They might get small credits if they're doing some small projects along there. But again, I think, I need to kind of dig the file back out and look at what a project might look like that would connect these, built crossings up to the school.
Yeah, I think we had originally, when we had that discussion, we were hoping for more flashing beacons, and it seems like we addressed the lower side of the hill, but the upper side of the hill didn't get any flashing beacons, and it doesn't have connected sidewalks. So what I'm concerned about is the kids walking from those upper neighborhoods trying to get to the school, especially as we talked that people are not using the school bus, and I know we've got a lot of congestion in there that we've dealt with. If connecting those sidewalks would encourage biking and walking to school, if I was just curious with that new development, if that was something that could be in the works if the grant wasn't approved.
And we will also look at this section. I don't remember exactly what we landed on with the last one. They did share that the largest project that you can propose is $2 million. And then the city would have to provide a 40% match.
Okay.
So in this scenario of kind of over east of the school, we would have to provide a cash match. If we were looking at a project over here, we could use the cost of these recently constructed beacons as part of our match. And so
Okay.
some of it is, strategic. Either of these projects is going to score relatively the same because it's supporting the same school. And so it's looking at, how do we create that project that checks the most buttons in the grant and gets us to a spot where it's funded.
Okay.
Yeah,
A little
because
struggle here would be this starts to get a little bit outside that 1 mile radius. And if you're outside that 1 mile, then you get lower points. So the closer to the school, the more points you get.
yeah, from the school on the north side to Winston, I think it is, there is no sidewalks on the north side of the road. On the south side, there's a small portion of it that there's sidewalks, and then it's just, ditch and gully on there. So there's really no way a student can walk from the neighborhood in Winston or Barlow or any of those neighborhoods or up where I'm at. You really couldn't have a child walking all the way down there. There's no continuation of
Way too
sidewalk.
dangerous. Yeah.
And they will fill in that little patch when they do the home development there, but that's, that's probably several years down the road before they start pushing dirt around.
One thing I'd like to add just real quick on that Sears property and that development up there. One, there should be neighborhood connectivity through to the school and through the road network. And then there's also a requirement for that subdivision to build basically a pathway. And I think they're even conditioned to put in a rapid flashing beacon on Holcomb where, so that pathway where Dana is showing would run kind of along a power line alignment through there, adjacent to the school and on the back side of the subdivision. So I think the connectivity for kind of the pedestrian connectivity to Holcomb Elementary School is going to improve. What I'm not exactly sure about is whether the school has a good path from where those connection points might make sense to the school or not. That may be something we'd have to work with the school to complete. But I think this property does not only complete its frontage improvements, but it has this pathway that provides a fair amount of opportunity for children, grade school age children, to be able to walk to school.
Okay. Now, when you say frontage improvements, where does that begin and end? I assume not sidewalks.
Dana's kind of showing the limits. So along Holcomb, it's along that frontage right there. And then in the internal streets all include the frontage improvements, just like any new subdivision.
Okay.
So it would do the sidewalk, the bike lane, streetlights, either a planter strip or a swale to treat the drainage.
So that project will rectify some of these things for us then, at least parts of it. Okay.
So
Yeah,
what year are we looking at this, if this funding gets through?
So applications are due in 2022, and I think the funding starts to become available in 2024.
Okay. Do you need neighborhood associations support with that?
I will. It's super early. Today was kind of hey, the program's back and here's the couple of changes that we've made. So I think final applications are due in August. And so before that, we'll get a resolution of support from the City Commission, ideally a letter of support from the Transportation Advisory Committee, even maybe the Neighborhood Association up there, and then also outreach and a support letter from the school that's would benefit from the project is required.
So you want it from like the HOA board, that have it signed by the residents of there?
Yeah, I think any of those when we get to that point.
Okay,
So it's a two-step process. The first step is you check all the boxes and you get a preliminary score on your project so that you can decide if you're going to take the time and effort to submit the formal application to compete for the funding. And that was at a request of many agencies that, did a lot of work up front and scored in the bottom third, and there, weren't even close to, meeting that funding cutoff line. And so this first one is, check these boxes. It's going to look at, your low income, your ever English learning students, absentee rates, those kind of things, and then kind of give you a preliminary score. And so that first round, I think we get the first round preliminary score in like June, and then we've got 2 months to submit the final application, which is when we would pursue those letters of support and neighborhood support.
okay, if you mark me down for that, because I'm on the board of the newest neighborhood up there, so there's 98 homes there. So we can get 98 signatures of support there. And then I know of the contact person in the neighborhood next to us. And then there's another one across the street on the south side, and I think they have an HOA membership there too. So I can work on getting those people contacted, and then that'll give you maybe 400 signatures there.
Okay.
Oh, it always helps with numbers.
Yeah, and I think generally the neighborhood has supported these projects, and we've tried. We weren't successful in the first round, but I'm hopeful that we were close last time, so I'm hopeful this time that we would meet that criteria and be funded. If not, we'll continue to submit again and again and again. I think Malala took 3 applications to get funded for the Malala Avenue streetscape. So we'll
Now
just
it's
keep
nice
trying.
Well, hey, Dana, did they talk much about, so in some of the past, these get fairly competitive, and at the metro approval level, usually we're competing with a lot of low-income neighborhoods across the region. Portland is usually a pretty active area. North Portland in particular, they often have a pretty concerted effort, even beyond what staff do with regard to their applications. If I remember, they get together as the used to be PTA, so really, rallying, and lots of times they are neighborhoods with disadvantaged neighborhoods, which Park Place doesn't really, even though that Holcomb Elementary School is a, what'd you call it, Dana, level 1.
Title I school.
Title I school, but that's probably not based on the neighborhoods real close. That may be some to do with the county housing, but there may be, some of that outside the city limits as well. So it may work a little better to actually have some of these neighborhood advocate groups connect with the school, and try to develop a kind of an effective campaign at the right time to speak on behalf of the project. Because I remember that happening a couple years ago. Is that still going to happen, Dana, as far as you know?
So this is the ODOT statewide safe routes to school, and to make it less subjective and more quantitative, each box you check gets you a certain number of points. And so if you check a box that says, I've got, a high percent, it's based on the exact percentage. And actually ODOT has really set it up that when you click the box and you say which school this project supports, it auto fills in your low income percentage, your absentee percentage. So it's not even the jurisdiction saying I've got 22% chronic absenteeism. The system auto populates it based on which school you're clicking to support. So it's become very much you get points for problems the school has, and then you earn points for your countermeasures or your safety measures that address those. So high-speed roads get more points. So Holcomb scores well on, a high-speed road. I think it's middle of the road for ADT volumes. It doesn't have as many crashes as some of the other corridors. But again, there isn't much advocating to do until you get to that second application phase and you attach your letters of support. There isn't really an opportunity for public comment.
Okay.
And isn't Bob that just left the committee, isn't he part of the CIC for that neighborhood?
Yeah,
Okay.
I believe so. We'll still be communicating with them.
Ladies and gentlemen, can we move on to the next item on the report? We've got this one pretty well discussed, and we got a half hour on what should have been an hour's meeting.
All right, so this is my last topic. And the question to the Transportation Advisory Committee tonight is, would you like to provide a letter of support to the City Commission on the Oregon City Westland Pedestrian and Bicycle Bridge Concept Plan? So super quick, I've just got 2 really quick slides. So the purpose of the work that we shared with you, I think a few months ago, was to identify potential bridge locations for crossing the Willamette River between Oregon City and Westland. And we go back on February 9th. I need to look, that might be February 8th. Anyways, we go back early February to a City Commission work session where the goal is to get feedback on the commission if they would like to move forward with adoption of this plan or not. And again, a few items. Currently, the only walking and biking option to cross the river is the historic Arch Bridge, which is not an ADA compliant bridge, and is very steep. I don't even know if you could take a wheelchair on the sidewalk. You might have to take it on the travel lane. It's very narrow as it goes around those structural supports. Bikes are on the roadway with a sharrow. And with the steep grade, it's not always the safest for those that have ridden it. We really tried to find alignments. So I've got the 2 corridors. We started, I think we had at one point 15 different lines across here connecting to various different points. And as we kind of worked through benefits and burdens and concerns with each of those alignments, we weren't able to get to a point where the technical team felt super confident in any one alignment and exactly where it would land on either side of the river. And so we ended up with these 2 kind of most promising corridors. And so at this point, what would be taken to City Commission and the Planning Commission for adoption are these kind of broad corridors with the intention that if we can acknowledge that we want to consider this more, then we can work to get another grant to refine these into actual bridge locations and continue to investigate those benefits and burdens and the unknowns. We ended up with quite a few things on the unknown list that still need more time and effort to fully understand. And so there's a full report. I did not provide the link to that, but it is on, there's a ODOT hosts a webpage for this with the full concept plan. And so I think the question tonight to the team is, do you want to provide your feedback to the City Commission via a letter that would be attached to their packet in February or not?
So are they looking for direction as far as whether we support it in general and then in these area 1 or area 2, or are they just looking for if it was to be built, where would we propose?
I think the ask is, does the TAC support continuing to investigate these two green areas for a future bridge.
And funding coming from the city, the state, the bridge project, what would the funding source potentially be?
That's kind of under one of those unknowns.
Okay.
But so for a little perspective, so there's a lot of money coming out of the federal government for various types of projects. Generally, to be funded with any of that federal funds, your project has to be in an adopted plan. So if magic money fell out of the sky to build this bridge today, we couldn't even accept it because it's not in an adopted plan.
Okay.
Dana,
Yes.
for what it's worth, and I think it's worth about a half a penny, but when the ODOT replaced the original bridge at 7th Street with what's there now, they built a temporary one that would have been in line with Highway 43, where it turns and goes straight toward the river. That's where they built a temporary bridge across at night, what would be 7th, it'd be 9th Street equivalent. Over here by the mill.
This one?
Now the next one to the left, over closer to the mill, that one.
Okay.
That's where they built a temporary bridge across while they erected the arch bridge. So there has been something there in the past, but as the chair, I'm willing to sign the letter saying that we are in support of increasing the alternative transportation ability between the two cities, and that continued investigation is warranted with an eye toward establishing a constructible design.
A second death, that's a motion.
Yeah. I would think that the ideal location would be the one to the left, because if the tribe develops that property and turns it into a entertainment, restaurant, convention center, hotel, whatever, it'll have a lot more access for pedestrian use there to bring in whatever kind of events and things like that. And it's not so much traffic it's probably a lot safer for pedestrians in general versus farther down the street where around 10th Street, where you have, how are you going to get the people across 99? Where over there you have a protected area that's going to be developed. And I don't know what year do they plan on developing the old mill? I know they're tearing the buildings down now, but when will we see grass in there? 5 years?
I'm not sure. And there's quite a bit in the plan. This alignment closer to the falls definitely supports tourism much better.
Right.
This alignment closer, to the travel routes supports those, commuting by bike because it's less out of direction travel. And so each structure has pros and cons. And again, those still need to continue to be investigated. This one supports tourism, but this one also brings more people closer to those cultural areas and, what might be found in excavations along the river from a cultural perspective. There's many benefits and burdens. I think, the question to the city commission is do they want to continue to look at this, or are they not interested in this long term? And then, as the Transportation Advisory Committee, it seems appropriate that you guys have a feedback loop to them, and this letter would be that.
I think in the long term, especially after the development of the mill, I could definitely see where the addition of, perhaps you even had parking across over by Willamette Falls Drive, you know, you had people walking across, biking across, and that whole transition, I think in the future sounds like it could be something warranted. I guess my biggest concern is at this moment in time, without that being developed and not knowing what and how it's going to be developed, you know, who are we serving here? Do we have any traffic counts or head counts of pedestrian traffic and bike traffic on the Arch Bridge right now? I mean, are we spending $10 million to put in a bridge to service 30 people a day? You know, is that the best use of our money? You talk about magic money coming out, I know, but that money's got to come from somebody's pocket. So, you know, who are we serving and how many people are we serving and by putting this in?
And I think the plan really looked at that. And like I mentioned, this one really supports tourism. This one would support more of those commuters. And again, I think, you know, from my perspective, 1+2 acknowledging that, you know, these might be viable corridors for the future is in the next year or so, we're kicking off work to look at 99E from 10th Street around to the tunnel. And how do we get a more appropriate pedestrian and bicycle amenities along there? How do we take that 17-foot wide sidewalk that we have up here to the north and bring that down and around to the mill site and to the tunnel? And when I start that work, we'll need to make, you know, some assumptions of, are we working around a potential bridge structure here? And what does that look like? Or are we trying to, you know, connect into this site with the Riverwalk and a potential bridge connection there? And, you know, so if we think this is something we might want in the future, then we could have an option A and an option B. You know, if we build this before there's a bridge, how would we build it? You know, or option B, if we know there's going to be a bridge, what might we do differently if we were able to fund construction of these 99E improvements before a bridge was built?
And maybe, or Henry, can I speak up real quick here? So there's been a boatload of really good work that the Transportation Advisory Committee has only participated in through key members. And I'm thinking Ray was involved in that. I don't remember. Was there any others, Dana, from TAC on that committee? Do you remember?
I don't believe so.
I don't think so, John.
Okay, so, but there's been a lot of various participants on this. And so I think we have an opportunity, and especially if you're a long-term thinker, Ben, listening to you talk about current times or how are we going to fund this? I agree. I think because I'm not really a planner, I'm more of a guy who wants to build a project. I struggle with some of these long-term visions, but I also understand that we don't, the region doesn't have a pedestrian crossing across the Willamette River, really, between the Selwood Bridge, and that's the last one, right? I don't think there's an actual pedestrian crossing until Salem. There's a ferry crossing, but there's really not a pedestrian crossing. So, and in my view, I think Milwaukee and Lake Oswego looked at this a while back, and that I think got rushed without a lot of community input. There may be an opportunity there in the future. I don't know, but I just see two communities between Oregon City and Westland that would really see use of that bridge in the future. There's the presentation work that happened on this showed a lot of development potential that's really even not present day, right? I mean, I think the progress that's being made on the mill site is good progress, but nobody's kind of stepped out and said exactly what the timeline looks like. But if you step back and think about projects like I-205 and that's obviously was a long-term project. It took vision from big thinkers, and I think that's what we're asking of this Transportation Advisory Committee and really the City Commission, to think a little bit beyond present day, not get tripped up over the funding piece, because it is to me, I think there's going to be opportunities in the future, and but without an adopted plan, it's a deal killer. And so I think for the TAC, it's like, are we wanting to participate as a kind of a present day deal killer, or we want to participate as a vision of the future and trying to figure out how the region might better cross as pedestrians or non-vehicles across the river. And so that's how I see this. And I've got lots of opinions about where the right place is. I just think that's not what we're asking for today. It's really, we've got a good study that's left a lot of open-ended questions. I think that's appropriate at this point in time. Do you want to support it as TAC or not?
Hey, John, the other thing I would consider was when they built the Trillium Bridge, it was primary for light rail and the bus, but I don't think the city of Portland really had the numbers right on the pedestrians that are walking across that. And I've walked across it several times, and it's an enjoyable walk. And there's a lot of people that go across that bridge. So I think it's more of, if you build it, they'll come. We just have to decide if it's worthy of building it and where to put it that's going to get the best usage out of it. And I think if the tribe really plans on developing that area down there, then it'll have a much greater need in there for people to bike and walk and whatever.
That's true, Tim. I agree with that. The other perspective that I think about is our downtown core extends from the mill site to the landfill site, and we forget about that sometimes, right? So we've got an existing downtown that kind of sits in the middle of that, and in theory or in hopes, our old downtown will continue to become a thriving place, and there will be the other end, which would be a landfill, which has got its own kind of intention for more of a regional center, and then we've got the mill site. So I think the same argument could be made for the other alignments. And like I said, today it's open-ended, right? I just think that the community gets a little focused on what could happen on along the Westland side of the river and the Oregon City side of the river. But man, we've got a lot of potential along Main Street, and definitely a lot of potential along Washington with the regional center there. So yeah, and all that's just going to mean more likelihood that pedestrians, bicyclists will want to use something other than Highway 43.
Well, I mean, I think with all that development, especially at Falls, and I mean, I think there's going to be incentive for people from West. I mean, I think people from Westland will want to come down there and to the Falls and downtown. So I mean, this is much closer than having to go the other parts of the Westland, for a lot of people that live near that area.
There's a motion on the floor and it's been seconded. We've had some discussion. If we want to get out of here by 8 o'clock, we need to vote. So all those in favor of submitting a letter to the city commission in support of this idea, say aye.
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 Those opposed, say so. Abstentions? Dana, we're in support. We probably don't want to say which one or anything, but we're in support.
Yep, I will draft up a very kind of generic, no specific alignment, but support continuing to investigate things, and I will get that over to you, Henry, for signature.
Okay, thank you. Now then.
Just quickly before we move on from this topic, I'm thinking about having the Clackamas County Pedestrian Bikeway Advisory Committee also send a letter, because we meet before the work session. And so just want to put it out there that I'll get this on our agenda as well to send a letter from our committee too.
Okay, thank you very much.
So, please, no questions. I have a thought, but I'm going to hold it to myself because it doesn't really matter at this point. But I'm trying to figure out if there's any other business, and I don't think there is. So is there anything anybody wants to put on the schedule for next meeting or to bring up as a topic or anything? I'm going to put out there that I'm not going to be at the March meeting, period. Because where I'm going to be, it's going to be 10 hours out of sync. So somebody will have to run the meeting. So with that, not hearing anything else, we stand adjourned. Thank you, Dana. Thank you, Vance. Thank you, John. Thank you, everybody, for attending.
Great. Thanks, folks.
All right, thank you.
Welcome, Bruce.